Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Ms. Collins. Thank you for having me here. My name is Annette Smith. I'm a 69-year-old widow. I live in a small town outside of Sacramento, California, and I'm a longtime customer of Wells Fargo. I was once a business owner and a landowner, but an identity theft scam left me without assets or credit. The thieves were prosecuted, but I was not compensated and was never able to rebuild from that experience. Many years later, I'm still poor. I've received Social Security as my only source of income for the last 7 years. My Social Security check is for about $1,200 a month. That's the only income I have to pay all of my expenses. 5.5 years ago, I asked my local branch for a small personal loan, just enough to fix my car so it would pass California's smog test requirement. They told me they didn't offer those, but that I could get a direct deposit advance online. I went home, and with just a few clicks, I had $500 in my account. A couple of weeks later, when my Social Security check was electronically deposited to my account, the bank withdrew the $500 plus a $50 fee. Back then, my monthly Social Security check was far less than the $1,200, and the $550 that Wells Fargo took was half of my monthly income. Without it, I couldn't pay my rent and other bills and expenses. So a few days later, I took out another $500. But the same thing happened the next month. The bank withdrew the entire amount plus a fee again. I couldn't pay the advance in full and all of my bills and expenses. I had to take another loan, again and again, to my surprise, for 5 years. A few times I tried not to take another advance, but to do that, I had to let other bills go. The next month, those bills were behind and harder to pay. I never made it 2 full months without having to borrow after paying the last advance. A few other times, I tried taking out less than $500, maybe only $200 or $300, but I still couldn't stretch my Social Security check to pay the whole advance and make ends meet. Any time that I tried to not borrow again or to borrow less, the bills and expenses I couldn't pay would catch up a month or two later, and I was back where I started. It was horrible, but I thought there was no way out. I didn't have a credit card. I'm sorry, I don't want to cry. I didn't have a credit card. Wells Fargo had already told me that they wouldn't give me a personal loan. I could not borrow from my kids who were themselves struggling, and I never considered going to one of those payday loan stores because I knew they had a reputation for charging really high interest rates, and those are things I couldn't afford. In fact, I thought that since banks were required to follow certain laws, they couldn't do what those payday loans people were doing. I thought that the problem was me, that I just couldn't figure a way out, even though I tried everything I could think of. I recently learned that Wells Fargo has installment plans. If I'd have known that then, I'd have been really happy. In fact, I tried to set up an installment plan recently, but they told me it was impossible. Finally, I talked to someone at the California Reinvestment Coalition who was looking for people who borrowed a Wells Fargo direct deposit advance. I described my situation and answered their questions. They looked into my bank statements and helped me figure out how much this was costing me. In total, I got 63 advances from Wells Fargo in 5 years, and the fees I paid totaled almost $3,000. I was shocked, but mostly deeply embarrassed. But then I realized that I couldn't be the only one that this had happened to in this situation. That's when I agreed to tell my story so that other seniors wouldn't think like I did, that borrowing a direct deposit advance was safe and you could end up paying your Social Security on a loan that's so hard to get out of. With CRC's support, I even went to the Wells Fargo shareholder meeting to tell CEO John Stump about my situation. He told me that someone from the bank would work with me. A few days later, I went with CRC to my local branch to ask for an installment plan. I wanted to pay the money I owed in small amounts that I could afford. CRC had told the bank we were coming, so when we got there, the branch manager and the district manager were there waiting for me. They also had someone from the corporate office on the phone. We asked for an installment plan so that I could pay the advance over time like you would other loans. The bank people said their system was automated, that there was no way to stop the next withdrawal or fix it so that I could pay in small installments that I could afford. Instead, they offered to forgive my last advance as long as I never borrowed an advance again from them. I agreed. A few days later, I saw that after they withdrew the payment, they credited me the same amount with a label marked Customer Satisfaction Credit. It was finally over. It feels good not to owe Wells Fargo anymore, but I know that there's others like me who haven't had their loans forgiven and are still struggling with the direct deposit advance. I'm asking you today to please do something, whatever you can, to stop banks from doing this to other seniors across the country.